Welcome, Chad. Welcome back. Welcome, Mary and Bob. You guys are all welcome to turn on your cameras if you would like to join us here.
Everyone.
Good afternoon.
Howdy. Want to introduce you both to everybody at the summit here. And I'll probably go back to, I think it was 2017. We had an event here in Harrisburg. Mary and her daughter Alicia, who you saw earlier during one of the breaks, we're here in Harrisburg. We have worked with Mary now for 6 or 7 years, specifically around compliance, really protecting our dollars as well. And Mary and Alicia introduced us to Bob. Bob knows everything there is to know about billing, all the data behind it, everything else. Just did an amazing podcast recording with us, helped a lot of us through PPP in the early days, really saved a lot of practices in the early days of the pandemic, did a ton of selfless work and provided us great guidance here. So Mary is the queen of compliance. Actually, we met in 2015. Now I remember. Queen of compliance. She and the BCMS team will help with everything that you can possibly imagine around compliance. And Bob knows revenue cycle and billing inside and out. I know for many of us, it's a key thing right now to protect the dollars, the reimbursement for the services that we're actually providing and not leaving money on the table. So you're going to love their session here. And thank you both for doing this, Mary and Bob.
And Chad, can you see my screen?
You're good. Yep, I can see your screen.
Wonderful.
Mary, if it's possible for you to make it full screen.
Oh, I'm sorry, then you're seeing the wrong one. Okay. I want to change screens. Okay.
That looks great.
Okay, but now I have to get you from the whole thing. Okay. All righty. Well, welcome. And that was lovely, Chad. Thank you so very much. We have had a wonderful time working with Breakthrough as well. So this afternoon, we are going to do the quickest review of 3 major compliance matters that can help you control your losses and create some gains, hopefully. I'm going to allow about 5 minutes for each of these 3. Unfortunately, we don't have time for questions, but what we have done is provided you with a lot of resources. You can click on links and you will be brought to our landing page. And from that landing page, you will get either full PowerPoint presentations on the subject or other resources. Okay, with that, let's just go ahead. So let's talk about changing payment methodology from an enrolled participating provider to a non-participating. And that sounds crazy. It sounds like you either participate or you don't. But in this situation, you do have to be enrolled, and these are 2 classifications. So again, if this PowerPoint link doesn't work, you can go to your chat box or however Andrea has set up the information to be given to you. So we're looking at a way to increase possibly the opportunity to make more money. So if you change your enrollment status from participating, which most of you probably are, to non-participating, you still have to be enrolled in the program. But between November, the mid part of November and December, you are allowed to say, you know, I have another option and I'm going to stay enrolled, but I'm going to have a different way of collecting payment from Medicare. These changes can only be made 1 time a year, so we're real timely. You can start looking at the material and see if you're interested in doing this. So basically, the benefits of doing this is you are going to be able to collect more total allowable money using the non-participating provider status. And it allows you to collect pay at the time of service from the beneficiary. So those of you who are doing cash-based practices right now, this is a very familiar territory. Those of you who aren't, you have to think twice about this because you're going to be collecting cash from people who might not want to part with their money. But 15% is quite of an incentive to me, and that allows you to collect 15% of Medicare's normal allowable for physical therapy services as a non-participating provider. And I know this sounds crazy, but when you see the whole PowerPoint, it should make sense. So what does this do? It improves, obviously, your cash flow. You're not waiting for payment. You get paid at the time of service. If you're non-participating, this is what happens. You must bill Medicare. Then you can increase the amount of the patient's responsibility. So that's not Medicare, to up to 15% more. They call that the limited charge. And so you are going to be collecting 115% more total. Medicare will, now this is the point you have to understand. Medicare will pay the patient directly. You will no longer get a payment because you've already collected payment. They pay the patient 75% instead of 80% of the allowable fee schedule. But if you don't collect from the patient and you don't collect the full amount, this does not work. So what are the risks? And you're saying, why didn't I do this before? Well, there are risks. Since Medicare does reduce a fee schedule to the patients, it's 5% less. That means you have to be okay with the patients paying more. And Medicare, again, pays the patient directly for their co-share. If, and I keep saying this over and over, if you're not willing to collect at the time of service, do not change to non-participating. This is a quick layout. I do not have time to go through this, but it'll show you what happens as a participating therapist with, let's just, we're using $100 as the fee schedule, what happens at the non-participating level. And non-participating has two options. You would never accept assignment from the patient. There's a lot more stability in that. Or you could say, I'm non-participating, knowing that there's going to be a reduction, again, of that $80 portion that Medicare would pay on $100 to 75%. So if you accept assignment, you will bill Medicare. Medicare will pay you, but you're going to have that reduction of 5%. So look at these carefully, and please do look at the PowerPoint presentation so you can understand how this works. Unit counting methodology. This has been my bread and butter, let's say that, at breakthrough presentations. We have almost covered this every single time. I asked Chad, is the audience tired of this? He said, do it again, Mary. So I'm doing it again. So when we look at unit counting methodology, there is certainly an opportunity to increase your dollars, especially if you've been doing everything at the 8-minute rule. You know, everyone's familiar with the 8-minute rule, categories, how you can count your each unit when you get paid for, multiple units, that type of thing. And then AMA's rule is that anything over 50% of the total of 15 minutes per unit is payable as one unit. Now, there is a caveat there, and we'll go through that. So, regardless of whether you're using Medicare methodology or whether you're using AMA methodology, you have to use the most current version of the CPT codes. There's very few exceptions in that. Workers' comp is not considered a covered entity as a payer, so they can kind of manipulate their codes, and so be very careful with that. And there are a few other payers, such as third-party accident, disability payers. Many people ask, well, can you just tell us who allows Medicare methodology or utilizes it, and who uses AMA methodology? No, I can't. I wish I could. I can tell you in general, federal payers use Medicare methodology. Medicare Advantage, as you know, is coordinated through federally, but it is commercial payers, and they can set their own payment rules. They still have to comply with the CPT codes, but they can decide whether they're going to use the 8-minute rule or the AMA rule. And the only way you're really going to know that with any sense of confidence is to look at your payer or coverage policies per payer. And I would encourage you to do that for your top payers so you are certain what methodology they allow. If there is no answer, if there's no comment at all from your payer, then I would probably say it's safe to use the AMA methodology, because most payers, if they're going to defer to the 8-minute rule, will say quite a bit about Medicare. And if they are talking about Medicare in documentation and other coverage policies, most likely they'll follow the 8-minute rule. The thing to understand about the two methodologies is that Medicare doesn't care what CPT code you use. They total the total minutes, and then the units are derived, the number of units are derived from that. AMA, on the other hand, counts the minutes per CPT code. They expect you to hit 50% and greater of the 15-minute allowed minutes for that particular unit. And if you have 2 units of the same CPT code, you have to hit the whole 15 minutes plus at least another 8 minutes to get 2 units. And I'll show you this. I have some illustrations to make that a little clearer. So let's look at the first step. When we compare the two, AMA, we have 8 minutes of exercise, manual therapy, and therapeutic activities for a total of 24 minutes. As you can see, 3 individual separate and distinct CPT codes, 24 minutes. That gives you 3 units. If you go over and look at Medicare's 8-minute rule, same CPT codes, but again, Medicare doesn't care what CPT codes, they're looking at the total minutes. Those of you who are familiar with the way Medicare handles its 8-minute rule, we are only going to generate 2 units because we do not have enough total minutes to hit 37, or exceed 37. Now look at the next example. We have 16 minutes of exercise, 8 minutes of manual therapy. Again, 24 minutes. But as you can see, AMA, because you did not hit 15 minutes plus 8 minutes of exercise, you're only going to get 1 unit for that. You do have 8 minutes of manual therapy, so you get a unit there. But the total is 2 billable units. Medicare, on the other hand, using the same CPT codes, because you use the total, you have 24 and 24 minutes, which equals 2. So here we are, both of them are the same. And the third example shows where the difference again pops up, this time in the favor of Medicare. We have 33 minutes under exercise and 7 minutes under manual therapy. You do generate 2 billable units for exercise because, again, you hit the 15 minutes, you exceeded the 8 minutes by the full unit count. So you get 2 units there, but you did not exceed manual therapy's 8-minute majority. So you have 40 minutes, you get 2 units. Same codes, you look at Medicare, 2 units of exercise, 7 minutes of manual therapy. I call this the dangling minutes. You have 30 minutes you're going to get credit for the exercise. You have 7 minutes, which would not meet the 8-minute rule, except you have 3 additional minutes left over. And when you put that together, the 40 minutes from Medicare then generates 3 units. Okay. So let's talk about this, and this is so very important. This is, excuse me, telling the story on the claim. Quickly, poor progression can be noted on the claim, and that is when we're talking about billing. But if you bill the way you based on your documentation, you're telling the claim reader that, hey, we're not moving the patient. Redundant coding, episodic coding, those types of things we're going to talk about a little bit more in the next slides here. So, excuse me. So when we look at utilizing all available ICD-10 codes, we are encouraging you to tell the story of complexity on the claim. So if you have a patient who maybe is a total hip, but he has other comorbidities that are very important that can be substantiated through your medical provider's referral or information, you are going to be able to put those on. If you are doing more interventions and because of impairments and you're putting impairment diagnosis on the claim, again, it shows the complexity. It makes the reader of the claim say, oh, well, this is a pretty complicated case. No wonder this is happening. So we want to remember to move the patient from basic exercises, range of motion, those types of things. Certainly increasing the intensity, the reps, whatever, but not the same exercises, not the same CPT codes all the way from the beginning to the end of the episode. Strength and range of motion are essential. Obviously, we can't build too much of independence without those, but we have to remember that our goal is to move them to functional independence. So when we look at therapeutic activities using words such as IN that start with end in ing, bending, lifting, pivoting, those types of work are indication that you were using multiple joints, multiple muscle groups. You're challenging the body. You're not in just purely doing exercise or range of motion or just manual therapy, which again, while we need to, I was a manual therapist, we have to do these things. They still are very dependent procedures. So when we talk about coding to purpose or coding for the definition, we have to look at, are we actually representing the way we bill with what we have documented? And if not, we have a problem. Many of us do what I call convenient, or it is redundant coding, because it's just easier to say, oh, throw that in with exercise. So we have to look at the code definition we're required by our Medicare and other payer guidelines and HIPAA to utilize these codes in their definitions. So we have to say, if it says, strength, range of motion, endurance, that's exercise. But when we get into balance and gait training and other things, we can't just throw something into a category. We have to look at the activity performed and the purpose. Okay, let's go here. What's that moving for me? Let's look at progressive coding. And when we were doing a little prep session, Bob and I were talking, and he said, I've never heard you talk about progressive coding. Progressive coding shows that you start the patient with some basic fundamental interventions. So when we are looking at strength, endurance, range of motion, flexibility, that is the basis. But we have to move the patient again to that independence, the challenging of the body in other activities that take them to that independence. And we have to balance, we have to code according to those. That can be seen at the claim. You can see if you do, 3 units of exercise for the entire episode of care, mingling in some manual therapy or some neuromuscular or whatever, but you see this fundamental continuation. And we should not have the patient just doing fundamental interventions. Exercise is the foundation of our service, but we have to remember, again, independence. So this was something that I will show you, and this is true. I audited a case a number of years ago. The difficulty of walking was the diagnosis, and this is how they coded it: 22 visits, 1 eval, 1 re-eval, and 66 therapeutic exercises. So you don't think that says what is going on? They have never progressed the patient. All they do is exercise. Is the patient going to be able to walk? You know, difficulty in walking. There's no gait training. Can they walk on uneven or different surfaces? You know, what can they do? Can they climb stairs or whatever? So none of this is going to be indicated just by exercise. So if we go here, this is how it really coded out when I read the documentation. Eval, re-eval, therapeutic exercise, 24, gait trainings 2, neuromuscular 12, manual therapy 12, 16 therapeutic exercises. Does that show a little more clinical decision making? Absolutely. So with that, I think I've hit my time, and I've got to turn this over to Bob. Please be sure to click on our landing page, and thank you very much for listening to this very, very short presentation. It's been great. Thank you.